Democrats have to stop thinking that what the voters dream about is to be hassled. If you buy a shed at Costco, it comes with this warning. Warning, this product can expose you to wood dust. Wood dust. No kidding, which is known to the state of California to cause cancer. That's right, California thinks you're going to snort your shed. I don't want to blow Pinocchio. I just want to put the lawnmower away. As Barack Obama once said, one of the biggest lessons he learned as president was there is no such thing as shovel-ready projects. Environmental impact statements used to be a few pages long. Now they're thousands of pages of legalistic nonsense and take an average of 4.5 years to complete, with thousands of bureaucrats filling out millions of paper forms that kill hundreds of forests to answer the question, is this good for the environment?
Bill Maher is directly targeting the Democrats, and this time his criticism is brutal. Even though they are no longer in power, Maher says their policies are still affecting everyday American life through the laws, mandates, and bureaucratic systems they left behind. In his view, the impact did not end when they lost control. It stayed, and people are still dealing with it. This is not just simple criticism. It is a complete breakdown of the system they created. So if you are ready for a full analysis, let's jump right into it.
California just passed a law requiring large retailers to have a non-gendered toy section. A non-gendered toy section? Isn't Ken enough? We need a law for that? You have to inject yourselves into everything, from where you can throw a frisbee to who can braid hair? This is why so many people, by the way, were triggered by COVID policies. They were already sick of rules. Regulation should be a good issue for Democrats. It's certainly one they're associated with.
Maher begins by pointing out how deeply democratic overreach has settled into normal American life and how it refuses to go away. The rules they introduced did not disappear when they lost power. They are still active, still draining common sense, and still making life more costly, more frustrating, and more unreasonable. He mentions California's non-gendered toy section law, a policy that feels more like satire than governance. Then there are crime policies that critics say weakened enforcement, allowed homelessness to grow in public areas, and reduced pressure on retail theft to the point where shoplifting began to look like a loophole. Maher's argument is that these are not outdated ideas sitting unused. They are active rules still shaping cities, streets, and daily routines. In his view, this is what happens when ideology continues making laws long after reality has changed.
I think the average voter would agree that banks and chemical plants and drug companies need watching. Telling a company, you can't dump the waste from your hog farm straight into the water supply. We're mostly all for that. But Democrats have become a parody of themselves, just making rules to make rules because it makes you feel like you're a better person. Making sure that everything bad never happens again, which you can never fully do. It just makes everyone else's life a drag. The Biden infrastructure bill has a provision that requires all new cars to install an alert system that goes off when you leave a baby in the back seat, which is something done only by crackheads and people who sadly, yes, do it on purpose. And after every one of us winds up bearing the cost for cars to install this alarm, you know who's going to ignore it? Crackheads and people who do it on purpose.
What makes Maher's argument effective is that he is not attacking every rule without reason. He clearly separates rules that protect people from those that mainly exist to make politicians appear morally superior. Seat belts make sense. Food safety makes sense. Clean water makes sense. No serious person argues against that, but Maher's point is that Democrats stopped focusing on solving real problems a long time ago. Instead, they began creating laws that sounded compassionate, appeared noble, and made them feel virtuous, even when those laws did little to improve daily life. It became governing as performance, lawmaking as self-praise, and policy as a show of moral image. While politicians felt satisfied, regular Americans were left paying the price.
A sensor light is not going to fix this problem, and Democrats no longer possess the common sense to understand that not every problem in the world can be fixed with a regulation. But don't tell that to the advocacy groups who also want every future car in America to only start when the driver blows into a breathalyzer. Oh, great, my other car is a Karen.
Then Maher moves into the deeper idea behind it all. Democrats started behaving as if human actions could be perfectly controlled through rules. As if enough mandates, restrictions, warnings, and policies could shape a flawless society from the top down. Maher strongly disagrees with that. Human nature does not change just because new laws are written. People adjust. They find shortcuts. They discover loopholes. They ignore rules that do not match real life. That is the hard truth underneath everything. You cannot regulate every bad choice or human flaw out of existence. At some point, regulation stops correcting reality and starts working against it. And when that happens, the public ends up feeling trapped under its weight.
Democrats have to stop thinking that what the voters dream about is to be hassled. If you buy a shed at Costco, it comes with this warning. Warning, this product can expose you to wood dust. Wood dust. No kidding, which is known to the state of California to cause cancer. That's right, California thinks you're going to snort your shed. I don't want to blow Pinocchio. I just want to put the lawnmower away.
Maher then highlights one of the most absurd examples from his discussion. California warning people about buying a wooden shed because of wood dust. On paper, it might sound careful. In reality, it sounds like a system so obsessed with warnings that it cannot separate real danger from unnecessary bureaucracy. Maher is not saying all safety warnings are useless. His point is that this kind of exaggerated caution turns regulation into something people stop taking seriously. Instead of helping people understand real risks, it conditions them to ignore the system. And once trust in government warnings is lost, even important alerts start to sound like just another overreaction added to everyday life.
Regular viewers of this program may recall my long battle to get solar power hooked up at my house. It involved this shed, which had to be built to house this solar battery. Yes, that battery needed a house to live in. And not just any house, one that had to follow the specifications of this chart. That's a real chart of the steps we had to go through to get this thing turned on.
Then Maher brings in a personal example, which makes the argument even stronger. He talks about trying to install solar power at his home, something that regulators usually support. But instead of being simple, the process became extremely complicated. The cost increased not because the technology was difficult, but because layers of rules and approvals slowed everything down. And that was not the only case. Maher also mentions needing several permits just to replace a garage door. A simple garage door. That kind of situation clearly shows what overregulation looks like in real life. It is not efficient, not intelligent, and not helpful. It is a system that creates delays, extra costs, and frustration for people doing normal tasks.
Barack Obama once said one of the biggest lessons he learned as president was there is no such thing as shovel-ready projects. Environmental impact statements used to be a few pages long. Now they're thousands of pages of legalistic nonsense and take an average of 4.5 years to complete, with thousands of bureaucrats filling out millions of paper forms that kill hundreds of forests to answer the question, is this good for the environment?
At this stage, the issue goes beyond frustration and becomes financially serious. Maher steps back and raises an important question. What is all this unnecessary bureaucracy actually costing the country? Every useless permit costs money. Every repeated review adds cost. Every department created to supervise another department increases spending. These costs do not stay small. They grow, combine, and turn into massive waste. In some cases, the process around a project ends up costing more than the project itself. The paperwork becomes more expensive than the actual work. The oversight continues longer than the construction. And in Maher's view, this reveals a major flaw in the system. It promises efficiency and fairness, but often delivers delays, debt, and a system that keeps feeding itself.
In San Francisco, the city's so nice you'll step in poop twice. There's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system. $1.7 million for one toilet.
At this point, the problem is no longer just irritating, it becomes clearly expensive. Maher again focuses on the bigger picture and asks what all this bureaucratic weight is doing to the country. Every unnecessary permit adds cost. Every repeated review increases expenses. Every office built to monitor another office raises spending further. These costs quickly grow larger. They multiply and turn into serious public waste. Sometimes the process around a project costs more than the project itself. The paperwork outweighs the actual work. The supervision lasts longer than the construction. And in Maher's view, this exposes a core issue in the system. It claims to offer fairness and accountability, but often results in delay, debt, and a structure that sustains itself.
And this wasn't some magic toilet that catches your phone when you drop it. So then a private company took pity on San Francisco and offered to build them their toilet for free. But after, quote, project management, construction management, architecture and engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, and cost estimation, the free toilet was still going to cost almost $1 million. You know, if you tack on fees like that, you're not a city, you're an airline.
This is where the discussion shifts from being just commentary to reflecting real experiences for many people in California. Maher points to the high-speed rail project, a clear example of big promises, heavy spending, and disappointing results. Huge amounts of money have been invested, years have passed, yet the outcome still does not match expectations. Then there are wildfire situations where critics say complicated approval processes delay preventive actions until damage has already occurred. In Maher's view, this is what happens when bureaucracy becomes so large that it blocks the very solutions it claims to support. At that stage, it is no longer just inefficiency. It becomes a serious failure in governance with real effects on people's lives.
It feels like San Francisco is actually proud of being impossible. Asked about the toilet, a spokesman for the Department of Public Works said, "We are a city of public input." Okay, but I'm stepping in public output. Meanwhile, the median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building. You need 87 permits, 15 from the Planning Commission, 26 from the Public Utilities Commission and the Fire Department, 19 from building inspectors, 17 from the Public Works, 10 related to public spaces, and 1 from a guy in a t-shirt that says Federal Boob Inspector.
By the end, Maher's message is very direct. From warning labels on simple products to extremely expensive public projects, from small permits to massive unfinished developments, the pattern is clear. His argument is that Democrats did not just create a few weak policies. They built a system of overregulation, excessive bureaucracy, and image-focused policymaking that still affects American life even after losing power. They confuse complexity with ability, paperwork with progress, and appearances with real results. And everyday Americans are still dealing with the consequences. That is why Maher's critique feels so strong. Sometimes the most honest approach is to point out the problem, no matter who created it. If you found this breakdown useful, like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.